Wow, it's been fun this morning so far. I mean, really fun. It's good to be here and worship God. So last week, I've been looking at these different aspects of sin because sometimes, not only don't we use the word sin, but when we say sin, sometimes it's kind of like vague. It's all bad. And it is bad. Sin is all bad. But what is it? And what are the character of this insidious thing that we call sin that has wrecked everything for the human race and continues to do so? And Christ, to remedy this, had to send his own son to die on the cross. That's the price he had to pay for this sin. So I want to look at different aspects of it. Last week we talked about it's a predator. It's like an animal that's a predator. It's right in its very nature to prey on you, and it hides in the shadows, and when the weakness and the right time comes, it will try to get you. So you have to guard yourself from that and know that it will do that. It will start off and it will minimize itself. It always looks smaller than it is. It's weak. It's a little thing. It's just a little thing. Take a little step. And then it lures you in, entangles you up, and you can't get out of it. So that was last week. We looked at that. This week, I want to look at it from a slightly different perspective. Again, it's something that most people wouldn't normally think, that this is really the core of sin. But this is where we are. Sin is a predator. And today, I want to look at something, self-deception. We have self-deception. I've self-deceived myself many times. And so have you, whether you know it or not. But this is part of the character of sin, is what happens. We justify ourselves, right? And God knew we couldn't justify ourselves. That's why he sent Jesus. But this fallen nature of us gives us an ability to deceive even our own selves. To know our problem, but we remain in denial of that problem. And that's part of the reason why many people in the world, they know they're not happy, they know there's something wrong, but they're looking for something to how to fix it, because they're really in denial of the real deep problem, which is sin. So, but when we do that, when we are in denial of it, when we are deceived by it, right, it allows ourselves to remain in the same situation that we were. And we can't get out. And it's not honoring God, right? So that's another aspect of sin that I want to look at today. It deceives us, but it's us who are really not willing, inside our own makeup. When we're in that, we don't want to see it. Kind of blindsides us, and somebody else has to show it to us. And because of that, it's very dangerous to our spiritual health and to our physical health. And the story that I'm about to read today in 1 Samuel is just an incredible story that shows this so perfectly that I wish I probably should have made 2 sermons out of this. What has happened is the first king, Israel, was trying again, self-denial. They had the greatest king in the world, God, right? The best king. But they said, we want it. And Samuel was a prophet, is the prophet, but he was like their leader. And, priest too, I think, Samuel. Was he? High priest. So, and a prophet. And, but they rejected him, kind of. They said, why can't we be like all the other nations? We want a king that we can see, an earthly king. And so, and Samuel was saddened by this, and then, there's all kinds of things. I don't want to go back there. But he said, God comforted him. He said, don't worry, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting God. They want a king. But God picked this guy, Saul, for the people. And God did choose him through Samuel, and he was anointed king, and he was a handsome man. He looked from the outward appearance a great man, and he was a good king for many, many years. He did a lot of things right. But this story picks up at a point where God said to him, and I'll tell you more about the story. God said to Samuel, there's these people called the Amalekites. These Amalekites were very evil, kind of like what we see today. I mean, they were a terrorist group. And what they wanted was wealth and power, and they just did anything. So they would go into these little towns or whatever it was, and they would just destroy the whole thing, kill all the people, take all the stuff, and then they become more powerful, they become stronger, and they just keep getting that way. And God said, this is not right. So we need justice. So the justice of God was, and sometimes God will do this. Now, it might surprise you, right? So don't misunderstand. You need to know a lot more about God than just this one attribute of God. But God is perfectly just, and he can do this. He said, Samuel, tell Saul, the king. Back then, the king didn't just sit around on a throne. He was the head of the army. So tell Saul, take his army and go and wipe these people out. We need justice. We need to show the world that what I'm saying as a just God, I mean it. So go, wipe them out, have nothing to do with them. Don't take anything from them. Nothing. Just, it has to be no doubt that this mission is a clean mission for justice. We don't gain anything. You go there, you do it, you come back. Nothing. Wipe everything off of you and come back. So that was the mission. So he tells Saul to go do this. And here we start the story. After he's done this, he comes back. And I want to show you now the man that Saul has become after some 40 years of leading, some 30, 40 years of leading Israel in relatively a good way. Here he is. We start at verse 12. So early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor, and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you, O Father Samuel. Where was I? The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. Exactly, you could put there. But Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Now, I want you to understand what I just said. So just, what is this ba, 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 ba I'm hearing, and this moo, moo, moo that I'm hearing? What's going on? What else did you get when you went to do this battle? Right? My granddaughter Audrey would have just loved that. And Saul answered, the soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the very best of the sheep and the cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God. But we totally destroyed the rest. Totally. You can see here how it's building up, right? So enough, said Samuel. Enough, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. That's why he met him early in the morning. He didn't sleep. Samuel loves Saul. But now it's like he's got this message that Saul, the Lord said, go tell him. Okay, go tell him. Samuel said, although, Saul, you were once small, tiny, puny, nobody. It doesn't say that, but does. In your own eyes. You were in your own eyes, because he was hiding among the luggage. Remember the story? He was scared to become king. Did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? That's the top-notch guy. The Lord anointed you king, Saul, over Israel. And he sent you on a mission, saying, go and completely destroy these wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? In other words, why did you take their stuff, including their king? But I did obey. The Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission. The Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back their king, Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder. The soldier did it. The best of what they had, and to devote it to God in order that we could sacrifice to them, to the Lord, your God, at Gilgal. That's why he had gone there. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifices, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he, Saul, has rejected you as king. That's the word of the Lord for us today. Thank you, Father. We offer it up to you. Amen. So what on earth is wrong with us? There is a man, Saul, who had it all, and he went and built a monument to himself. He's representing Jehovah God, the King. And how can such evil happen in our world? So here's the thing. How do we explain it? Well, here's exactly what we do. We try to explain it. So without God, here's what the explanations are. What's the problem? What's the problem? Well, here it is. On the surface, we might say something like this. Racism is awful. Look at what happened in the United States. It's racism that's causing the problem. Look at what happened in other countries. Racism, slavery, or we might say gangs are causing all the problem. Like if those gangs, we got gangs in Surrey, and when you join a gang, you got a problem. Drugs, man, drugs are the thing. Like somebody gets shot, it gotta be drugs. It's probably drugs that cause the problem. We got too much immigration. We got wrong people coming in. You know, we bring in people from everywhere, wrong people, wrong time. It's causing problems, right? Italy's experiencing that, right, Nancy? Too many people, problem. That's why the country's collapsing. See, you see it on the surface, right? Then it causes poverty, and then that's what really causes the collapse. And you know, when people have nothing to do because the government is rotten and there is no jobs, well, that's what causes the real problem, because people got too much time, too much opportunity, and then everything collapses. And then, you know, our kids, when they get wrong friends, that causes them to go down. That's the danger, the big danger. Wrong friends, wrong school, not enough money, finances, poverty. Is that really the problem? Is that really the root of the problem? No, sin is really the root of the problem, right? But that would be simplistic, because now we have to dig a little deeper. So how is sin the root of the problem? Well, this aspect of sin is one of the most insidious root of the problem. And I can tell you, because in my own life, it's caused me a lot of anguish. Right? I'm fighting against this aspect of sin. It is this incredible ability of the human mind, or ourselves, I don't know where it is, in the heart and the mind. It's an ability of the human heart, let's say, to deceive itself. To deceive itself. It could start even by just either overestimating itself, underestimating itself, and then whatever you tell it, it starts to believe it. Right? And we deny stuff to ourselves until to the point where we actually believe it. We believe it. Now what that means is that we are able to know something, right? But deceive ourselves into believing something else, something different, until it actually becomes unavoidable that it's sitting there and it's true. And even if we know the truth, then we just find some other method or way in our own life to bury it way deep inside. And then, of course, the world, as they would deal with it, years of therapy to undeep it, to bring it back, or whatever. whatever you've been burying for 30 years. And we don't, and we really don't know what happened. It just happens to us. So in order for you to really get what I'm about to say here, this self-deception technique that comes natural to us is this. I want to tell you, so does alcoholism kill you? Eventually. I've seen it kill people, right? Drug abuse kills you. Gambling? Yeah, same idea, because eventually, you know, you lose everything you hold dear to you, including your family, and then sometimes people kill themselves over losing everything, the depression, all things. But I want you to understand what really killed you. It's the self-denial of the problem that you had. If you talk to an alcoholic, he will not admit that he's an alcoholic. And it's only when he admits that he's an alcoholic that then God can begin healing that person. But he's not going to admit it because he's so denied. He says, I don't do it. Listen, I only have a little drink in the morning. That's it. Just a little nip at lunch. When I have lunch, you know, another half a bottle of wine. And then I have just, you know, a little few drinks at night when I come home. I'm not an alcoholic. Well, how many days did you go without doing that? Well, no, I just do that. Yeah, how's your liver? Well, it's kind of gone, then. It's killed you then. You have a problem. It's killed you. So you're in denial. So we have health issues. Just because you know something, I've known people that actually have been, you know, peeing blood, stool blood, and they didn't go to the doctor because they know. Like, see, they didn't go to the doctor to tell the doctor that there's something wrong. It's not normal. You don't normally see blood in there. But the body says, you know, if I go to the doctor, I know exactly what he's going to tell me. And so somehow you reason out, just stupid, that if you don't go to the doctor, it's better. Because then you don't have to deal with this painful thing. You got cancer in your bowel or whatever it is, right? So they just stay away long enough that it's too late. And by the time you do go to the doctor, it's too late. I knew a guy, I was thinking of him because I loved him. His name was George Kerr. The problem with George Kerr is he had, to the greatest degree, this whole thing, he was the hero of himself. A good man, but he would tell stories of jumping out of a plane. I think I should know George Kerr. Maybe. You might remember. But he was in the wars, and he was like a Superman in his stories. He made himself a Superman. I mean, he jumped out of the plane without a parachute and landed and survived. He used to do deep sea welding, and he'd go down there and he'd fight the sharks and he'd come out. But then I checked a few things. He really did do deep sea welding, and he really did jump out of a plane. But I just could never figure out what was the truth and what wasn't. And he really believed what he told you. George Kerr, his wife's name is Mary, she's still alive. But George Kerr was a young man. I mean, he was in like my age now. He went to and he knew everything, about everything. Kind of like me a little bit. Scares me, because that's bad. That's not a good trait. He thought he did, and he was. Like he would say, well, I'm an artist, I can carve. And he would carve the most amazing stuff out of wood. He really was a gifted man. But he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you got a really bad spot in your lungs. And he thought about it. That's just from that day when I breathed in that bad stuff, you know, when I jumped out of the plane and landed on the landmine or something. I don't know. He just, in his mind, he was able to do that. And I talked to him, George, so what's happening? Well, that's what they said, but it's like I know what I'm doing. 2 months later, he died. He had lung cancer. He did. See, he couldn't come to grips. The information that he was receiving was too painful to deal with, so he had his own little techniques to bury it. I want to kind of highlight this story by just showing to you how real it is. Because when you're first hearing this, you go, well, first of all, that's not me. Second of all, I don't know if this is really the big sin, you know. So I want to show you that it is real. I think I've already done that, actually. And it has a structure, how it works, because it's how you can recognize it. Just like you can recognize the predator sin, I want you to recognize the deception of sin and how it can deceive the most important person, you. And so you can't be a good judge of it. You need to belong to a group like this to be able to say, you know, I see something stuck on you. So I want to show you how it works. Then I want to give you an answer of how to deal with it, hopefully. So Saul, the first king of Israel, is this good example. In verse 12, Samuel got up early, as I said, because he was not sleeping all night, because of what God was showing him, what God was telling him. And God had told him to go wipe out these people because to show justice, but he didn't just do that. What happened? What was the big deal? Think about the big deal here. Well, the big deal is bigger than you think. He went over there, and in actual fact, you know, he said, I did 99.9% of what God said. But there was this little 0.9. And this little 0.9 is just such a little thing. I just took the king. I didn't kill the king. That was custom. Because these were important people. You don't kill the important people. They have value, right? And the other thing was, we took some of their best stuff because we're going to offer it to God. That's all. I actually did more than God asked. Not only did I wipe them out, I even got their stuff. Well, what's the big deal? The big deal is this. He did exactly the opposite of what God was trying to accomplish. And he didn't even know it. Like he had deceived himself. He really believed this. Saul really believed this. Because what he had done was, he had become the people that God went to clean up, to cleanse. To say, look, we got to show justice, we got to get rid of these people. Now, guess what happened? The nation of Israel has become them with Saul at the head. He wiped a whole group of people out and took their stuff and plundered it, and so that they gained. Now, that you know that this happens all the time, but we say it too much in the West, but, you know, war comes and some country says, you know, I went over there to just, you know, we have to, justice is needed. So they go over there and they do wipe out whatever and get that guy and whatever. But then what happens is, we know very well that with that justice comes a lot of gain. We gain wealth, we gain stuff. Well, God said, no, that's not what I want. The people of Israel, that's not their purpose. I don't want you to be that kind of a king. We don't need wealth. You don't need to be big. You're already big. I made you big. You're the king of the nation of Israel, the people of God. We're about peace, not war. Now, he told them sometimes to go conquer and gain land back for the people of Israel, but he didn't want them to plunder this stuff. Don't gain from it. Well, he had screwed it up. That's it. He screwed it up. So he missed the whole point completely. He missed the whole point. So he goes there, he comes back, but he's totally oblivious to it. And this had been going on for a while. God has seen this in his character. He's starting to build himself a monument. You know, have you ever seen anybody else? Like, I have a tendency to do that for myself, and that's why it's insidious in my own life. I have to knock my own monuments down. Watch out. It's dangerous. You might think, well, you know, you've got big stuff to build big monuments, but you've got little monuments. They're just as dangerous. You've been doing it for some time. Look at verse 11. To the point where God said to Samuel, in verse 11, I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me, and he has not carried out my instruction. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. See, Samuel was angry. That's not a good word. He wasn't angry at God, and he wasn't angry, and he was just upset. Why is this happening? It's happening, I tell you now, when we look back, and it's happening in your life and in my life, it happens when you're in denial of what you're doing. He's allowing himself to do this. And Saul is completely oblivious. He has no clue that he's doing this. He thinks he's even better than what God asked him to do. He came back with more more. He did everything but some, and even some. In verse 13 it says, when Samuel reached him, Saul said, and this is, you know that it is, the Lord bless you, Simon. The Lord bless you, Samuel. It's a wonderful day that the Lord has made. This is a beautiful day. Look at what happened. Look at what the Lord did. He gave us victory. It's the greatest victory in the Middle East. We took all the people. The only one survived is the king. I built myself a monument. Now I'm a king of kings. I'm an emperor. And we brought back the stuff, all of it. We're going to dedicate it. We're going to have the greatest party you've ever seen. We're going to dedicate all this to the Lord. You don't have to do anything, Samuel. I know you're overworked, but you can preach. I've prepared it all. I already went over there. I already made the monument. I made the altar. The fires are going. Bring the lamb. We're going to celebrate. Success. Israel has never been stronger. And I'm the best king of it. I have to watch this. I went too far. That's my first point. You get it? It is my first. Though the evidence was clear, though he knew very well in his heart, he had repressed it to the point that he wasn't even aware of what he did. He was actually doing the opposite. He was smothering it. You know, it was, remember when we first came in? And I said, how come it's blurry? That's what he was doing. It was crystal clear written. Saul, you're not doing what God wants you to do. But then he would just, on purpose, smother it. We do the same. You know stuff in your life, you're smothering it. You don't want to face up to it. The evidence is there. I can tell you something of myself, so I want to use me as a guinea pig. Okay? Here's my weight problem that I can use all the time because I can't hide it. Trust me, if I could hide it, I would from you. I'd figure out a way to get those clothes if they could, but I can't. So I have to deal with it this way. This is another technique. But it's not, hopefully not as bad. But I have this thing, and I can tell you without any doubt, and I believe it in my heart sometimes, you know, I'm overweight, right? But I don't overeat. I believe it. I have a slow metabolism. I don't know why. I become overweight. And I'm overweight. Sometimes I told you this before, and I'll tell you again, and you can look at the evidence. It's because I'm 1 foot 6 inches too short. See, if I was 1 foot 6 inches taller, I'd be the perfect weight. I'd be a macho man, especially with my tan. And see, I'm using myself as an example for you, but that's what it would be. I'd be one handsome guy. If you could squeeze me and get me taller. You see, but I'm just a chubby little guy who is overweight because of my slow metabolism. And the truth is, I eat too much food. Now you go, but I watched so-and-so and I didn't eat more than him. But I eat more food for the activity that I'm doing because I'm sitting on my big, God provides the big butt to sit on when you're big, right? So I'm sitting on it, but that's not burning enough calories, unfortunately. And the fact is that I'm trying to, as I'm preparing these messages, I decided, I got a big bruise here and there, I'm trying to do activity. I'm finding opportunities to, you know, that's what I'm doing, right? And I'm exposing it, you know, I'm telling you, listen, I'm eating too much for what I'm burning. That's why I'm overweight, primarily. And I know there's people that are disagreeing with me, but I'm just telling you, that's what it is. Fact is, I'm not burning it, that's why it's stuck here. That's the facts. Right? You step on the scale only once a year. That's it. Because when you do that, now I'm depressed. It's the same thing when I go shopping for clothes. What do you mean triple, 4 extra large is still too tight? Impossible. That's not true. I don't want to shop for clothes anymore because it depresses me. Just buy me the biggest one you can find. Yeah, sure. But the problem is that it'll kill you. And this friend of mine said, Tony, you need to go and buy a scale. Right now. Today. After lunch. And tomorrow we're not going to eat this stuff anymore. We're going to just have, next week when we meet for lunch, we'll just have coleslaw. Coleslaw? But I'm not overeating. He said, well, let's just try coleslaw. And this guy, I said, I don't like this guy already. A problem. What's going on? So, but that's the problem. Alcohol, smoking, all that stuff, those habits, they're just the means to the end. They're not the end of itself. The end, the problem that causes the end is the denial of it. My cigarettes is the only friend I have. What a stupid friend. That friend is killing you. Alcohol is the only way I can relax. It's not really. Doctors will tell you it gets your blood pressure going, everything going. It actually agitates you. So it's a lie. You're lying to yourself to make it right. Self-denial is way more serious than you think it is. It's way more serious and rampant. And by its very nature, it means that someone else has to tell you because you've already denied it to yourself. So unless somebody shows you, you can't see it. You know that you know, but you don't want to know. And so you come up with some technique. See, Saul came up with techniques in verse 15. He said, the soldiers brought it. I don't know. The soldiers had this idea. Well, weren't you king? You were king yesterday, you're king today, and you're the head of the battle. Well, they brought it, I don't know, and now we might as well have a party, even though God didn't want it. They brought the livestock, but they brought the best stuff. Who was in charge, Saul? And so this is another technique. We blame somebody else, right? For me, I have that technique too. I use it well many times. See, in my home, Joanne does not cook food that helps me lose weight. The first few years of our marriage, she cooked liver and onions with bacon. I love liver and onions and bacon. Oh, so does Dale. You see, here's a comrade in arms. We get a knife and a fork and liver and onions and bacon. A few potatoes on the side with stuff on it. And see, she can't cook properly. That's the problem. And that was the beginning of my problem, which is the root of everything. You see? And then McDonald's, well, they make it too easy. I don't even have to get out of my car anymore. Like before, you've got some exercise. But now, I just drive right through. And she says, supersize. I say, supersize. And the problem is, they don't put the right meat in there. They don't put the right stuff. And everything they put in there is designed to make you sick and kill you. It's their fault, you see? It is. And then there's the genetically modified foods. They're terrible. They kill you right away. Actually, Satan is the head of that company. Himself. In real life. And he probably is. But you see, he's using self-denial to cause it. You see, we don't have to eat. The point here is, I don't have to go through the drive-thru. I don't have to eat McDonald's. You get this? Are you getting it? I can tell Joanne, let's cook different food. And Joanne is basically cooking what I like. That's not a sin. She's not intentionally trying to kill me. Because if she didn't cook what I liked, I would go home and I go, I'm not eating that junk. There is people in our circles who are so close to knowing Jesus. They know Jesus almost. I don't know how you almost can know Jesus. But they're practically Christians. They even have communion. They talk Jesus talk. They do Jesus things. They fellowship with Jesus people. And then you kind of say to them one day, Well, but Jesus would like your life to kind of be like this a little bit. You know that thing, the alcohol you drink? It's killing you. Should we bring it to Jesus? You know that relationship, that person you're living with, that thing you're doing? Jesus, I know, doesn't like that. This person thinks about it for a minute, pulls the technique off the shelf and says, I hear you, I understand, but you know, the problem with Christianity is there's too many hypocrites in Christianity. There's too many people that are hypocrites. They say one thing, they do another. You see, it's shifting again. And you're saying, I know, but I'm not talking about all those people. I'm talking about you. I'm done. I don't want to hear this. There's just too many hypocrites, and maybe you're one of them. That's it. End of that relationship. You see, because people, it's too painful. They don't want to hear the painful truth of what's happening in our heart. There's another technique is, and I'll be done with this real quick, but we go, what Saul said is, well, I did it almost perfectly, and then I did even more. So in other words, what he's implying is that several rights will eventually kind of cover up for the one wrong that you did. So I did it wrong, but I had a good motive to do it wrong. Yeah. Well, that makes it right, brother or sister, right? No, never. No amount of rights will ever make the wrong right. But I'm going to donate everything I gained from that deal that I didn't do it right, kind of stole it, and I'm going to give it all to God, as though God needs all that money. See, that's another technique of covering it up. I've done that one. I didn't steal, by the way. Okay, it's not that simple. See, I'm in denial already. I need somebody to tell me, Tony, yeah, you didn't actually at gunpoint steal, right? But you worked it so maybe you took more, you earned more money than you should have on that job. I'm going to donate even more. That'll make it right. What a wonderful victory, Samuel. I've prepared everything. You preach. You see the denial there? I know I'm not perfect, but look at all the things I've done. What does verse 22 say? Or verse 20, actually. I'm going to make my point now. Obedience is better than sacrifice. But I did obey the Lord, in verse 20, he says. I went on this mission, the Lord assigned, I completely destroyed those Amalekites, and I brought back the king. The soldiers took the sheep and cattle, the plunder, the best of what was to God, in order, this is the reason we did it, in order that we could present it as a sacrifice to the Lord, your God. Remember, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Offer your whole life as a living sacrifice that's acceptable to God. What makes your sacrifice acceptable to God? Your heart, your motives behind that. That's what we talked about last week. Samuel doesn't buy Saul's explanation because he's been talking to God. And he said to him probably what is the key words. In verse 17. Let's put it up because it's the key verse. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord has anointed you king, and you're still building a monument to yourself. So, you think you're doing it for the Lord. Tony, you think you're doing it for the Lord. Now, because I used my own name, I can say Ashok, V, Anastasia, all of you, everything you're doing, you think you're doing it for the Lord. Take your blinders off. Give your head a shake. Rattle the brain around a little bit. You're doing it for yourself. And I hate to say that a lot of theology in the church today is actually based on making it look. It's this deception. It's this very deception. It makes it look like you're doing it for God. You're a great person doing it for God. But what actually even the language you use. But what is actually happening, everything you're doing for yourself. And it's self-focused. It's self-focused faith to build yourself up. You see, poor Saul, and I do feel sorry for Saul. We should have compassion for a man in such a situation because we find ourselves many times in such a situation. But here is the deal. Saul had an excuse. We don't. That's the difference. You see, Saul could say, well, I didn't know the whole plan. I didn't understand. I didn't know Jesus then. Maybe he missed the whole thing. He got lured into all this wealth and responsibility, whatever. I can start making excuses for Saul. But it's really, really hard for me to make excuses for me and you. We know we're small in our own eyes. We have seen and understood the love of Christ and God in our life. We know we can't accomplish anything. We can't create anything. We can't do anything. Yet we still try to make it look like we can somehow. But it's way too painful. The implications of dealing with the projections of it is way too painful, so we avoid it. For Saul, it was understandable. For us, not so much. Because we have grace. We know God's grace. We have seen it demonstrated in Jesus Christ. We need to receive it. But guess what? People are in denial of grace. They will continue. God has done it. He has provided. But we deny it. We don't want, it's too easy. It's too whatever. And people will go looking for a way to get into bondage. Hebrews 10. I forgot to tell you about these, but just listen to this and I'm done. In Hebrews 10 it says this, therefore, this is the summary, therefore, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased. Then I said, because Jesus is the one person that wanted to please the Father. Says you were not pleased. Here I am. It is written about me in the scrolls. I've come to do your will, my God. Take me. And in verse 10 it says, by that will we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the blood of Jesus Christ once and for all. We don't need to build an altar to ourselves anymore. We don't need to self-aggrandate ourselves, to make ourselves. We need to come smaller. That's the key. See, Jesus was the greatest. And he became so small. He humbled himself to become one of us. And believe me, that is tiny when you compare to God. He became one of us. So that we, small as we are, could become great. We could be related to the King of Kings who belong to him and his family. Isn't that the most amazing thoughts in our faith? Should that not allow us and set us free? Allow those thoughts to set us free. I don't have to prove anything. See, I can just set you free. Let it go. I got a tummy. It's okay. God needs to work in me. He will. I don't have to make excuses. I'm eating too much food. That's why it's there. That's it. And God doesn't want that. And He'll bring healing. But you know what? He doesn't need me to lose weight and be 1.5 feet taller either. Because I know He loves me the way I am. And He loves you the way you are. He wants all of you. Come to Him today. Father, thank you for this message.